Thank you so much, Kay, for that. I'm going to actually pull the microphone out because we've got 10 minutes for you to be able to ask Kay any questions or observations that you...
My name's Margaret Piper, and I've been working for over 30 years in the refugee space. And so I've got one suggestion and a plea. The suggestion in terms of identifying vulnerable people within communities, whether it's elder abuse or domestic violence, is hairdressers.
I've got them on my list.
Fabulous, because they're a place that people go and chat, and we need to be doing a lot more work educating hairdressers to identify vulnerabilities.
Thank you. I've actually said that one of the things, rather than having some grand public thing, that little brochures with helplines for that particular state and information about their rights that be available, and you most probably could even do some in the language where you look at the distribution of particular communities, like the Vietnamese community in Richmond,
right.
for example. And but the other thing is, I've also pharmacists are another area.
Yep.
I'm not sleeping. Give me something over the counter. I'm very lucky. One of my former chief of staffs is the CEO of the Pharmacy Guild, and we've always got him on board. And their education group are going to do some education of pharmacists about identifying, well, especially the young people working in the pharmacy, if they come in and say, you know, and the bank, I'm not sleeping, the banks are another area. Anywhere where older people intersect and where we have to actually say, this is how you get help. The hospital is a perfect example, St Vincent's Hospital. I hope Sydney. Anybody here from working in a hospital? Well, if you know anybody who's working in the social work department in a hospital, they should be copying what's being done. The other interesting thing in Victoria, in that now they've done the elder abuse, they're now looking at, and because of our interest in the core community, they're looking at enslavement. And they're getting young women coming in who've had botched abortions, who've got a sexually transmitted disease, or they've got some serious injury from being abused and they report them to the social work department. The social work department now does the same thing as they did with the people who are being abused. But one of the problems is they have to report them to the AFP, and I'm now on a mission to have them and I've got to talk to Kate Jenkins because more of her portfolio than mine, but to talk about, can you actually have a Red Cross person, because they get referred to the Red Cross, embedded into AFP, so they know, because they understand the Red Cross, they're frightened about police because they come from countries, but they have their passports taken from them and all sorts of things. So St V's is really leading the way, and it's great to see social workers doing such good work, you know, really practical work.
Yeah. And my substantive comment was to just check that something's on your radar. As you would know from your past history, it was very rare that people arrived in Australia as refugees, older refugees. We see refugees ageing in Australia, but typically the cohort that arrived were young and young families. That's changed in the last couple of years, and particularly in the last 18 months. And we're seeing more and more people arriving old. And this introduces a range of complex problems that we are not used to dealing with as a country. Now, whether it's my aged care, but also in the area of employment. You mentioned HR. HR will typically look at somebody and look at the amount of investment that they have to make in order to take them on, so that older people arriving from a refugee background are instantly excluded from opportunities to enter the workforce. Yet we've seen very successful outcomes when there has been that support, so that I don't know how much it's on your radar, but I would appeal to you to look carefully at the emerging and complex issues that are coming from this new cohort.
Thank you. It has been pointed out to me. I have 24 hours in the day, and so I've had to try and contain things, but that fits within that area, so it has been raised with me.
Thank you very much, Kay. It was a really good talk. I'm a journalist and an author, and my area of research is ageing and sickness at the moment. I'm from a cold background, and I've seen how ageing is affecting people around me and in my, I guess, community and my family. One of the things you talked about was the importance of getting people into work, but what if they're ill and can't work? What initiatives could you see being I guess, created to help people who are older and mentally suffering because they're still able-bodied, they're still mentally switched on, but they can't maintain a job, for example. And because there's also this pressure to age in place, especially in cold communities. I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but the idea of putting your parents in a nursing home is a bit, you don't want to be doing that. And so how do we keep people who are aging and unwell active and positive when the mental state is so down? Is that too much? Sorry.
I can only save a certain part of the community, and I've really had to cut my coat to fit my cloth. I have 2 staff members. I only had 1. I've now been given an extra one to do some of these issues. I have to try and focus. One of the issues, I understand the issue, and there are a lot of older people of non-call background who are isolated, who are ill. I think there are, when I was PAL Sec for Immigration, which was a great training. When I look at the experiences I've had, it's sort of lovely leading up to this job, because 3 years in as Parliamentary for Immigration, I met a lot of people from particularly social clubs for Polish people, social club. I think it really is important that the families find out about where there are activities and try and involve them in that. Sometimes they're not. Some people are joiners and some people are not joiners, and they were never joiners when they were younger. I used to say to some of my students, not all old people are nice. Some of them are revolting young people, and they'll be revolting old people. You've still got to treat them with respect in a hospital if you're treating them. But don't think they'll turn to nice old ladies. And some people are joiners when they're young, and they belong, and they've got lots of social contacts. You can't make that good later on in life. And there's a book that's out, some of you may have read it, The 100-Year Life. And it talks about, to young people in particular, about investing in your job, but investing in your social contacts as well. And how if you're living a longer life, you've got to have contacts and social engagement that meets your needs when you stop working. Now, older people now, both from the core community and the Australian community, particularly men, have their social network in work, and when they finish work, it drops away. Or it's been all about their family, and then their family breaks up, and some of it drops away. But the issue that you're raising is very complex. It's not, you can't solve it like that. And I think for young people growing up and watching, think, maybe I should get myself involved in a not-for-profit, or in a social club, or in an activity. But as I said, some people will resist that. So how you get them involved, I'm fascinated, because I don't sleep very well and I listen to the radio, how many people have a network on the radio. I'd like to send my greetings to Mary from such and such, and whatever that guy is out in America where he rings in every night. They all say hello to him. He's got some illness. And they form a social thing, and they say, we haven't heard from such and such. Is she okay? And someone goes, oh, yes, I saw her at such a... I don't know, you listen to that radio station at night? ABC, yeah. They have this whole community talking to each other.
I know there's a couple more questions.
Hang on, we maybe should be encouraging called radio stations to actually make sure that they have some activities that talk to older people about what they can do, and even have a community. Sounds odd, but they do look after each other. And there are lots of called radio stations.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if it was maybe on the radar as well, alongside of...
Yes, but I can only do...
Of course, no, and I don't mean you...
No, but I know. But it's something that, you can actually activate it by saying, why isn't the Greek radio station, or why isn't the such and such running a special... Some of them do, special programs for older people where they can actually ring in and talk to each other in their own language. What's happening in Greece? What's happening in...
May I make a related comment to that? I know you've got another speaker, but it's related to that. Sorry, I'm Mikhail Chong. I'm from Advanced Diversity Services, where we have program. It's all government. Advanced Diversity Services, which is formerly known as Migrant Resource Center.
Yes, I know.
We help all the core community.
Yes.
And it related to her comment, we run it's all funded. All our programs are funded, all the 3 levels. And this program is for daycare for the aged people. And that's it. the most important thing is for somebody in this environment that they do not withdraw. The moment they withdraw and they cut off the community, that's the fastest downhill. But as long as they get engaged and they attend, there are numerous, as you said, there are numerous organizations like this for the aged people. And
Who collect them, some of them?
And yeah, and we even have buses going around. And I'm sure we are not the only one. We are based south in Rockdale, but I know that there are similar MRCs all over New South Wales, and I'm sure in other states. And you'll be surprised when they have their weekly get-togethers. Sometimes, you know, you can see the sparkle in their eyes when they're talking about topic of their interest. And so, yeah, I would say that there's a lot of scope out there.
I have an Italian friend in Melbourne whose husband had a stroke. He goes to daycare twice a week. And he goes to a men's shed twice a week, and he makes the tea. So he can't do any of the other stuff, but he has company. So for 4 days a week, she said to me, it's my lifeblood. So it's looking at the various services that are available and that somebody can participate in. And I think maybe the core community has to work as hard to make sure that people know those services are available.
Shirley Randall. Kay, I was delighted with your talk, particularly your mention of Box Hill. I was chief executive down at the City of Whitehorse, and it was a community of young education institutions, so it's fantastic. We need to get that kind of network, I think, more visible around the country.
They've set an example, and the next council is actually funding the CLC to do that, and I think others are seeing the benefit. It's changed the policing at that area.
Yes.
They don't go, oh, you know, we're going to go send them to the court, because a lot of older people, and NARI, the National Ageing Research Institute, has said older people don't want their children to go to court. They want them to understand they've done the wrong thing, they want recompense, and they want them to be treated for whether it's their gambling or whatever it's caused them to take the money. And the police down there are now much more attuned to those needs, and we've now got some funding from the Lord Mayor's Fund. We've got a lot of foundations in Melbourne which have come out of a tax ruling that allowed people to avoid some death duties by setting up foundations, and that's why there are more foundations in Melbourne, and they do a lot of innovative stuff. They've now funded a relationship centre which was set up to keep people out of the family court. Ruddock and I set those up, and they see that they could play a role in keeping people out of the court, but teaching the older people about what their rights are, and then having mediation. And they had one woman who rang from a nursing home and said, I don't want to be in this nursing home. My sisters are in another nursing home and my children wouldn't listen to me, and I want to move, and they won't let me do it. And they rang the nursing home and said, we're coming to see her. And they said, oh, a power of attorney said she can't have visitors. And they said, okay, you want to try us on, or are you going to let us in? Because they had lawyers in the centre. And they said, oh, I'll let them in. And they decided this woman was of sound mind. They don't know how she found out, because they haven't advertised, because they haven't got limited resources. And they organised for her to be shifted, and the family to be told what their responsibilities were as a power of attorney, and negotiated that through. And I think that's going to be a model that I hopefully will be able to be replicated. And I think we need to be looking at how can we deal with this, people get the help, without the fear that they're going to end up with their children in court and be jailed and whatever. Now, if they've taken their whole house, which somebody did in Melbourne, $2 million worth, and drove off to Queensland, dropped the father at the farm gate of his sister, emaciated in the clothes he stood up in, that's criminal. And
Yes.
that needs to be dealt with.
Well, that's wonderful, because I think expanding that kind of successful model is very
There's some
important.
exciting stuff happening,
Yes.
but we've got, I feel like a bumblebee at the moment, running around pollinating all these ideas.
Of course you are. One final comment. I'm on the Economic Security for Women agency for the Department of Women, and also the Older Women's Network, which we were talking about at lunchtime. I'm so pleased about the men's sheds. They're marvellous. But older women are just so much neglected. We're finding it very, very difficult, where we're monitoring in every meeting how many times older women are mentioned and how much they get a Guernsey. So I want to congratulate on what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's extremely important, both for men and women.
We go back a long way.
We do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's good. Can we have one?
My name is Coty Harvey, and I have no claim to fame, I'm afraid. But I lived in Bougainville Island for 6 years, and that was a life-changing experience because I learnt self-empowerment. And it was a place where there were no institutions, no one to provide anything for you. And during
You said
those
Bougainville.
Bougainville, yeah. And during that time, so much happened there that was in a social context. Art societies grew, people learned to paint, people did put on theatre, all sorts of things happened, sporting. And it was self-motivated. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody can create their own environment, but what I'm suggesting is that you don't necessarily need institutions, and I'm sort of playing into this lady's notion, that a group of people can get together and just do things, whether it's a book club, whether they dance once a week, or, you know, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be institutionalized, it doesn't have to be highly organized. You just have, you know, a group of people who perhaps know each other, or they might network within their local community, they share a language, they share a culture, and they can explore things, cook together, whatever it is. But you don't need, you know, you can do it yourself, basically.
There's wonderful knitting groups that one of my friends belongs to. She's
Yes.
retired, and you just drop in, and I think it's every second Tuesday or something, and they know there'll be people there knitting squares for blankets for homeless people. And she said, I just love going around and talks, and we just pick up a thing of wool, and people donate wool, and she said, and sometimes you can help each other, and it's
Yes,
not
and
organised.
it's a wonderful opportunity to also
It's a
exchange. If
tool.
you're having difficulties,
Yeah.
you've got, you know,
Yeah,
people.
I agree with you, and I think we can expect things to be done for us rather than for us doing things for ourselves.
And it's a great industry for people who are post-retired. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. I think we could talk for ages, and that's you've really given us some food for thought, and it is a big job. I felt for you with this question because there was so much involved in that, and I might make one observation, if I may, from many years of working in this field, and that is that you know, I think there are some real institutional barriers in public policy that tend to entrench negative attitudes about older people. And it has been extremely difficult over the years and for governments of all persuasions to put a healthy ageing framework around ageing and older people. We tend to see ageing through the paradigm of illness and health, and aged care is now back in health. We got it out for a while into social care, you know, where you start to look at functional assessments and some of the principles of choice and control that have come into our social care programs but haven't really seriously made it into our aged care programs yet. It's been 7 years since the Productivity Commission did their report around reforms to the aged care sector. You know, and so I think that there are some real institutional barriers that do entrench some of these attitudes, and they're very, very difficult to get on top of, but we need to keep working together on it. So now my notes say that Richard is actually going to say a word of thanks to Kay. So I'm